John Batchelor with Monica Crowley, my colleague and co-host of the Monica Crowley Show on WABC on the weekends and many stations across this country. She's nationally syndicated. Monica, we speak of the presidential contest and that Barack Obama is the winner for now. But there are early signs that the United States Senate Republican minority is preparing the field for what we know will be the debates this year and the primary polling in 2012. We're joined by David Drucker, who covers the United States Senate for Roll Call. And David's measure of the GOP senators looking over the field is important. These are early steps. David, a very good evening to you. The man I pay a whole lot of attention to is the physician of the Senate, John Barrasso of Wyoming. He's number 4, as my memory, in the leadership. He is also critical to the opposition to Obamacare. He has a choice. Who is it, David? And good evening.
Yeah, good evening, John. It's good to be with you, and good to be with you, Monica.
Hi, David.
It is John Thune, senator from South Dakota. We don't know yet if he's going to run, but he will announce either way by the end of this month. And I'm having a hard time picking which way he's going to go, but I tend to think he might do it. John Barrasso is very enthusiastically behind Mr. Thune.
David, when you and I saw your piece, and you run down a couple of senators who are backing certain horses. For example, Dan Coats backing Mitch Daniels, and there was somebody else, John.
Orrin Hatch backing Mitt Romney.
Correct. And it seems to me that there's a lot of state loyalty behind these initial endorsements, right?
There is, and it's not unusual, so it wasn't exactly rocket science to present it. What I found interesting is that Senator Coats has talked to Mitch Daniels about this and didn't just give the obligatory nod, because you never know how rivalries within a state go. Sometimes Republicans will hate Republicans more than they hate Democrats from their own home state. But Dan Coats said that he really wants Mitch Daniels to run, that they've talked about it, and he's really hoping to endorse him. So I thought that was interesting. And Orrin Hatch, I didn't know how this possible John Huntsman candidacy would affect things, but Orrin Hatch is an old Romney supporter. He's already committed to Romney should Romney run, which I found interesting. And as I've learned from Republican sources who follow Utah politics, conservatives and most Republicans out in Utah consider Ambassador Huntsman to be the best Democratic governor they've ever had, which they say jokingly. And so in retrospect, knowing that, it's not surprising that Orrin Hatch would have no second thoughts about who he's backing.
The prize is the Tea Party, clearly for momentum, for money raising, and for a headline. Marco Rubio, associated with the Tea Party, but especially Mike Lee and Rand Paul. Do we have an indication for one or all of them? Do they have candidates?
I don't have an indication yet for 2 of them. Now, Senator Rubio's people told me that he is not going to endorse in the Republican primary and that he will stay out of it. And the reason it was his people that told me and not him was because he plans to spend the next 6 to 9 months out of the national spotlight. He really doesn't want to talk to national press. He wants to focus on Florida and sort of present himself to Floridians as being their senator and not having designs on national office or having national aspirations ahead of their own needs. These are, of course, the people who voted for him in the first place. And so I'm not always convinced that this kind of thing will last, but for the meantime, Senator Rubio will not be speaking at CPAC. He turned down an invitation, and for now he's holding good to his word. And so he's staying out of things. I think that Rand Paul will say nothing until we know for sure whether his father is going to run in the primary or not. If his father were to not run, and that's Representative Ron Paul from Texas, then it'd be interesting to see which direction he goes. And Mike Lee, I simply have not talked to yet. He'll be an interesting one to watch. He's more of an establishment type than many people understand and realize, and so it'll be interesting to see where he throws his hat.
David, looking at your initial list here, with the exception of Orrin Hatch's early endorsement of Mitt Romney, it looks like these other early endorsements are of our folks that are on the B list, that are sort of second-tier candidates, Mitch Daniels, Thune, and so on, and not a lot of talk of the A-list candidates, Newt Gingrich, and dare I say Sarah Palin, whose name we have not yet raised, John Batchelor. But it seems that at least in this initial wave of endorsements, we don't have a lot of the...
The little canary comes down whenever you mention
something. Yeah. So do you think, first of all, do these endorsements really really mean anything anymore in the context of modern politics? And secondly, why have we not seen more vocal endorsements, full-throated endorsements of some of the A-list folks?
Monica, some great questions. First of all, I think part of this is that we don't have a lot of firmly announced candidates yet. And so I think that their backers will be hesitant to get out in front of the people that they are ready to endorse. Second of all, I think that people are hedging, trying to figure out what is going to work the best for them politically. And there's a lot of indecision out there as to who would really make a top-tier candidate. I think something else that's going on is that you have people that are running that clearly want member support for the contacts and the fundraising it can bring. It's not going to do them necessarily any good in terms of an image of the endorsement, and I asked senators about that, and they sort of agreed with that. But in talking to other Republican strategists, they made the point that at least if you can get some Tea Party backing in terms of some of the new freshman members, House members or senators who come from that area, it might give you a sort of seal of approval with the type of Republicans that are going to be voting in the presidential primaries.
Yeah, and you know what, David, that dovetails with my next question, which might be, given the context of the Tea Party movement in this country, it might be that the top-tier candidates do not want an endorsement from the establishment. They do not want an endorsement coming out of the United States Senate.
I don't really think they do, per se. It's not something they're going to wave around with a flag. However, it can be very important in terms of political infrastructure within various states, where you're going to need boots on the ground and an understanding of how the voting electorate is in a particular state. And so it's valuable from that perspective. But you're right. It's not something they're going to want to wave around and make a big deal out of. I think that a lot of this has to do with the fact that the candidates are getting out of the gate very slowly. I think nobody wants to be the first one out of the gate to also be the first flame out. And so you have a process that might get started a little bit late, and therefore everything that goes with it in terms of endorsements and the activity surrounding the prep is going to get a later start. But I think that there are probably a lot of Republican senators that know who they want to back, but probably will not tell me as I get around to asking them over the next week or so.
David Drucker of Roll Call, Monica Crowley, my colleague and co-host. I'm John Batchelor.